Hi, YouTube. My name is Nick. I'm a software engineer, and I decided to start posting the personal projects that I've made for myself on YouTube and kind of present them, in a way that people might find use for. So, with this project, I started learning Go. It was my first approach into Go coming in from primarily Java. The project was kind of like in a middle ground for a while. I decided to, let's slap on like a login system and user account creation and a few little extras here and there. And I came up with this thing. Hold up, nullGuard. I came up with this thing. So, nullGuard is basically an application that gives you a shortcut to self hosting a VPN. Some people might ask, well, why do you need to self-host a VPN in the first place? Well, the answer to this is actually pretty simple. Australia banned corn sites and a lot of age restrictions have been taking over the internet essentially. The thing is that people aren't just gonna give up. There are options. People don't want their biometric or their personal information mass scanned by third party services that presumably are supposed to keep your information safe. And then the government has full access to the entirety of the traffic you generate, and they can completely and fully profile you based on that with age verification. So now, if you want to access corn, the government's gonna be able to see what kind of kinky shit you're into, for example. But corn is the least of your problems. Like this is a meme, but they want to know what you think, what you do, what you look at any given moment in time with absolutely no limitation whatsoever. So this is where the internet is headed to, and I think that this is a pretty dystopian thing, to be absolutely honest with you. And by the way, VPNs are not immune to this thing as well. So as Australia is, headed into age verification with the majority of the world following up on that, like we've seen the United States take that approach. We've seen definitely the UK take that approach, and we are seeing right now the EU proactively discussing some of these things and trying to come up with the most dystopian laws ever in regards to age verification. We've also just seen California, forcing age verification on operating systems. Brother, what the fuck? These people don't even know that fucking Linux exists. But anyways, or like smart IoT devices exist. Like, how are you gonna age verify on your smoke detector? Please, lawmakers, explain that shit to me. But anyways, let's just leave that there, and let's see what other people are doing. Like, for example, lawmakers want to ban VPNs. Yes, absolutely, that has been the case. That, like, the bill in Wisconsin didn't pass. I'm not sure about Michigan. I have to check this thing, but you know that definitely we're headed in that direction. Control, control, control. Even if you use like a commercial VPN, let's see the possibilities I've highlighted here. You have like Proton VPN. This is a very privacy focused VPN service, and it's one of the best out there. Then you have Mulvad, which, by the way, these guys, I think that both of these companies have been rated and actually produced pretty much next to nothing. So these are pretty secure. But even if you want to use these services, governments are, I guess, eventually gonna go after them, and they're gonna make it so that it's very difficult to use these services of one of these companies, which is very unfortunate because I use these and so do many other people. So today as a result of this, I want to present to you a small app that I made for myself. It's intended to be self-hosted, and you can self-host it within your local network or on a remote VPS, depending on what it is that you want to do. By the way, I forgot to mention something which got me laughing the other day. There's this website which is freedom.gov. It's owned by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the United States. And what this basically is, it's a government VPN. It's hosted by these guys essentially. Are you like every packet's gonna go through this infrastructure? Like everything you do, every site. Yeah, your ISP is not gonna be able to, look at your traffic, but these guys will be. Oh boy. But anyways, so let's see how we can self-host this thing. This thing also has like a Docker hub. Not too many downloads, but I don't expect this to be like super popular. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the approach that you would do if you were to rent a VPS, okay? I'm not doing a VPS right now. I'm actually going to be connecting to my home network, but the setup is similar. So usually when you rent a VPS, by the way, I just want to mention some really good VPS providers. You can rent a VPS at like $4 a month. These guys, all of these companies, you can rent a VPS with them. It's not very expensive and it just works, and you don't worry about it. They provision it for you, they give you a static IP, and you just have to keep in mind that while you have like some pretty nice speeds, as you can see down here, the reality is that you do have like a monthly traffic limitation, which is like something like 2 terabyte. But for the purpose of self-hosting, because not everybody can put a server in their apartment or at their house, especially with these prices nowadays, you can just rent a VPS, and the provider is going to give you a static IP address, and then you can set up your server. So the setup procedure right now, I'm just going to do, for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to do the simplest possible thing. So do as I say, not as I do, essentially. All right, let's get down to the technical part here. So I managed to botch my previous footage, so I'm recording this video right after I recorded a basic video on how to set up a VPS or a virtual machine, maybe if you have like some ability to host one at home. And today I'm gonna make use of one of my VMs on my Unraid server. So here goes nothing. I'm just gonna log in here, clear this thing, and we're gonna set up nullGuard with the deployment right here. Now this deployment, it gives us a Docker Compose. So we're just gonna go ahead and change user to Docker user. I mistyped the password. Oh my God. Okay. So in OPT, we have volumes. In here, we're gonna make a Docker Compose file, and this Docker Compose file we are going to use for the deployment in the demonstration in the article. Now, links to the article are going to be published in the video description. So we're just gonna go ahead and straight up try to do this real quick so I can show you what nullGuard looks like and how it works. Okay, let's make a file, vdocker compose. And I'm just going to straight up copy this and just go to the beginning of the file. I like this. I'm going to rename this to MariaDB. For now, this is going to be the image. Later on, I'm going to show you I have a MariaDB image that I maintain myself. It's completely open source and you can see the repository, but let's not focus in on that. Okay, so restart unless stopped, root password. We're just going to leave it as root password. MariaDB database is going to be nullGuard, and this is going to be nullGuard pass. Okay. Now, I don't like the volume, so I like to be a lot more explicit with my volumes, and I don't like to edit the Docker configuration for the default stuff. So in here, we're going to type in /opt volumes. Varlib MySQL, okay. So nullGuard is the VPN app. The UI will be on port 8080. We could change that maybe. Now, in my home network, I do have a few other installations of WireGuard. So I'm not going to use the public facing port. I'm not going to use it as it is the default, because that will make a conflict, and I need to forward a port different than this one because this one is already reserved for another environment. I hope this makes sense to you. Here, I'm not actually going to use 51822. Okay, the DB host is straight up going to be MariaDB. Okay, 3306. Actually, for ports, should I define ports here? I should, shouldn't I? Ports 3306 to 3306 quoted up. Later on, I'm just gonna comment this out, the port section here, because I don't want this to, I don't want the database to be public, and this is just for me, just for now. And it's not that this server is ever going to be exposed to the internet, not at all. I'm just trying to do things the right way so people can have a good example. Anyways, DB host MariaDB, nullGuard DB pass is nullGuard pass. Session secret key, by the way, session secret key usually is gonna have to be something pretty secret. So for session secret key, we are gonna have to generate a long random string token. This is for security. This will usually get auto-generated unless something breaks in the container itself. But I do have a service deployed right here, so I'm just going to use it. It's on my server. This is an awesome project, by the way. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy one of these straight into here. So delete all this and just use this one. Now we have a value auto start service, which here is set to true. What this means is it's going to automatically start services once the application is started and ready. Then we set our environment to production. And if we go into the Docker Compose, if we go into the Docker Hub page for this app, we see that we do also have a bunch of other values that we can use. Like we already have the session secret key. We already have the auto start servers. I'm just going to go ahead for the sake of verbosity and copy these over and paste these in here. Now, these are not non-mandatory, but these are the default host name, the default server name that will be given to the initial interface that we configure with WireGuard. There are some hard-coded values to still provide you with a suggestion in the UI for the sake of usability. There's also a default server network to be created. I chose this one in particular as default since it's most probably not going to come into conflict with anything else that I or anybody else usually has. And then we do also have some other defaults here. We also do have, these two are worth mentioning. So cookie secure usually should be false if you're not going to expose nullGuard to the public internet in order for you to be able to log in remotely. If you're just going to be accessing it via the VPN network, leave it as it is. And do not, I repeat, do not expose the nullGuard application to the public internet, if possible in general. But do not do it, especially if you do not have an SSL certificate. And then we have the user session max age. This is how long your user session will last until the application logs you out automatically. Then we have to edit the dependency. And this dependency will be for MariaDB. So basically, nullGuard will wait for MariaDB to come online and be healthy. Now, we notice that we do not have a network setup for both of these containers. Create a networks section. Networks, database, driver, bridge. That should be sufficient. Now, oops. Now we go into here and we do networks and we do database base. Okay, copy this and just straight up paste that thing. Docker compose up -d. It says that it's up. All right. So let's take a look at the nullGuard application. So again, the port is 8080. So we do 8080 and here we have it. So let's set up the admin user. So on the first setup of the application, we need to set up an admin user. You specify your username that you're going to be logging in with. You specify your password. Watch your password complexity here. You can do a password hint, and this is pretty much the thing. Create the account. Okay, the account is created. Let's actually go ahead and save this and use the user for that. Log in, and you're immediately met with the create server page. Essentially, we're right here, and since we don't have any servers, the app will straight up tell us you need to configure one before you do anything else. And if we go to the client page, it tells us there are no configured servers. You need to create one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to straight up create a server from the default settings. These are, by the way, the public keys and the private keys, both for client and server, are automatically generated. And if you want to just rotate them, just refresh the page. This is non-editable. You can configure the port, and this is pretty much everything. So here I have 51820, and in here I have 51822. So this is the external port for people who don't know this. This is the externally mapped port towards the host system, and this is the port that is being mapped to inside the Docker container, which translates to this one. So we leave this as is. We do have some post up and post down rules that are usually for more advanced users. This is a pretty straightforward configuration. Now I'm going to switch to a screenshot because the next thing that I'm about to show is going to show my public IP address. In here, we basically see the default client configurations. These are some settings that your clients are going to be by default populated with these settings. The WAN address is your server makes a call to an external domain, which verifies the WAN, wide area network address of your server. This is your public IP address. Beyond that, default client supernet CIDR. This is settings to how your clients will connect to the server and what they will have access to. And default client keep alive is essentially how often will clients make pings to verify that they are alive. Click on save once we have confirmed and we like all of the settings on the create server page. And now we have a server. We can define another one, but we already have one. We can edit the configuration from down here. All right, so before I go ahead and start the server, we're gonna go ahead and go to clients right here, and we're gonna create a client that we can connect with. So first of all, the client page automatically chooses a server for us to create a client with. So since we have right now from the drop down, it's going to show us only that one. Then we have a client name. So for that client name, I'm just going to go ahead and choose laptop. The public key and the private key again are auto-generated, and if I refresh the page, it's going to give me new keys. The client IP address is essentially a static IP address within the WireGuard network that this particular client is going to use. The allowed IPs is essentially network settings that your client uses to know what to have access to. But if we click on the full tunnel option right here, what's going to end up happening is we are going to see that these two CIDRs are getting added to this field. What this means is that if you are in Australia and you want to connect to your VPS in Germany, by clicking full tunnel, essentially your client is now going to obtain the IP address as an exit point of your server in Germany. And your government and your ISP aren't going to be able to see what your traffic is because it's encrypted. Scrolling down a bit, we have DNS servers with some DNS server settings. I recommend that you do not play with these two options right here unless you know what you're doing. Why? Well, because if you don't set up DNS properly, you're gonna see strange behavior. These are options, they are functional, but try and don't go too hard on those if you don't know what you're doing exactly. Then we have the default client keep alive, which is 30 seconds, which is more than fine. This is how often the client will ping the server and say, hey, bro, I'm here. And yeah, this is pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this client. And now we already see that the client is available. Now, we see that the server wasn't started and now it is. Keep in mind that every time you create a client, for that client to become active, you need to come in the server page and hit the restart button after creating the client so that the server takes in the settings for that client, essentially. And the restart lasts like less than 2 seconds, probably less than 1 second overall. And going back to the Docker Compose thing, we have the auto start servers environment variable setting. Essentially, what this will do is whenever the nullGuard application is started, it will automatically activate all of the servers in this list. This is intended for ease of use once your server environment restarts. So looking at this client, we can edit it. We can download, or rather scan, a QR code with our phone from this page if we want to configure a phone or another mobile device to use WireGuard. There are both Android, I think there's iOS apps for WireGuard, desktop apps, pretty much for every operating system, and the client comes built in to most desktop environments in Linux, so no worries about that. We can go ahead and download a zip config file using which we will configure our WireGuard application. And finally, we can delete this config, and after deleting a config, also you need to go into the server page and hit restart. Maybe for ease of use in the future, if a client is created or deleted, I would implement a feature with an environment variable to allow automatic restarts of a server, but this will be documented, and for now it's not a part of this app. Moving on, so here's what we're gonna do. I've downloaded and installed this application onto my PC. I'm just gonna go ahead and choose a zip file that we just downloaded. So at this point, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to go into edit mode for the client and just change out the port to what I said that I would forward on my router in my home network. Now, if you are a public WireGuard user, in terms of, you're using WireGuard through a VPS, you don't need to do any of this. But, for me, it is what it is. We click on save, and we see that our IP address ends in 87. Now, if I go ahead and connect my WireGuard client instance, and if I refresh what's my IP address.com, we're going to see that now my public IP address is being tunneled to another IP, and the IPv4 address is now ending in 0.35, which is the address of my server. I hope that somebody finds this thing useful. I definitely do for myself, because I got annoyed at working with CLIs and managing that all the time manually. Honestly, I haven't ever seen another UI like this, which is kind of strange to me why nobody did something that just works. Also, here we have an admin settings page. You can change the password for your account, for your admin account, and you can also create and manage API tokens. Like, let's say, for example, I want to create a token for an automated pipeline script that would add clients whenever there is a new administrative domain user, maybe, for example. So I could add in a hook like that. So we're gonna go in and say AD for administrative domain, new user add, and tokens do have expiration days. I will set this one for 0, for example, so it doesn't expire. Create the token. It's going to show us that token. We can copy it. Make sure you keep this safe, because it's not going to get shown to you anymore. I've copied the token, and it's going to tell you when it was last used, when it expires, and when it was created, and who created it also. You can also revoke it, and that pretty much deletes it straight away, and it's a hard delete too. So yeah, I hope you like this application. If you like what you saw, like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. There will be many more future projects coming to this channel, and many other demonstrations on various different topics. In terms of how much AI was used for this project, to be completely honest with you, I used AI to refactor the project since it was kind of in a messy development state, and there were some UI issues as well. So I am a fan of AI, and we are going to talk about AI down the line, but I'm not one of those developers that just vibe codes their way into everything. I like to clean things up myself and do the hands-on work so that I know that whatever I publish is of good quality for people to use. Thank you very much for watching. Live long and prosper.